Training, we're going to talk next about evaluating neighborhoods and areas. That should be page 10 in your training manual. Evaluating areas and neighborhoods. We're going to talk about low-income areas, moderate-income areas, and middle-income areas. Low, moderate, and middle income. Now, my thoughts are most of your quick flips should occur in your low and moderate income areas. Most of your quick flips where you're getting in, getting out, and getting paid should occur in your low to moderate income areas. Again, that's relative to your market. Why is that the case? Well, number one, in your low and moderate income areas, you have most of the price points that are fairly attractive. In other words, you have your cheaper houses in your city in the low to moderate areas. Additionally, most investors are looking in low to moderate income areas because they're trying to cash flow rental properties, right? They're trying to get $100 to $200 a month cash flow per unit. So we want to go where the action's at, which is low to moderate income because you have the rundown houses, and more importantly, that's where the other investors that are looking, that are wandering where? Wandering in the wilderness. Now, anytime you look at a low-income area, any city, USA, the first question you want to ask yourself is, what is the ratio? What is the ratio of renters to homeowners? What is the ratio of renters to homeowners? Now, from coast to coast, as far as an average is concerned, most of your low-income areas are 80% renters and 20% owners. 80 renters, 20 owners. Which means that 80% of the properties that are in the given neighborhood are owned by who? They're owned by investors. These are landlords that are renting to the 80% of the residents that live there. Always amazes me, someone says, well, great, Todd, you showed me how to find a boarded-up house in a low-income area, but who in the world is going to buy it? Well, the 80% of the landlords down there are going to be key buyers. And we're going to show you tomorrow how to extract all the data on those landlords so you can quickly flip it to them. Is that a good thing? So always ask yourself the area ratio. Anywhere I go in the country, I ask myself, what's the ratio of renters to homeowners? What's the ratio? Because the more renters you have, the less stable the neighborhood is. That's why we can get it at cheap prices. All right, the more renters you have, the less stable the neighborhood. Therefore, we can buy at cheaper prices. So the ratio is 80-20. Now let's talk about next our strategy for low-income areas. What should you do when you find that target property low-income area? Well, many investors, in fact, the 90 to 95% that are out there currently operating right now in today's world, are trying to go down there, buy, rent, and hold, and unbeknownst to them, hang on for dear life. My thoughts are that should not be your strategy. Your strategy should simply be to supply those investors that want to buy, rent, and hold, or don't know another way. Very important distinction. Your job is to supply those investors with deals in the low-income areas that can't find them as quickly as you or don't know a better way. Everybody follow that? Really important to your long-term success. So when it comes to strategy, I want you just to write flip. That's the only thing that I want you to think about doing in low-income areas. I don't want you to hold rental properties. I don't want you to try to do lease options. I don't want you to try to fix the home and sell it to a homeowner. Why would that be a potential disaster? You buy your little cheap house, you fix it up, and it's the nicest home on the block, and you try to retail that to a homeowner who can go out to Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and get a brand new loan. Well, they don't want to move down to that neighborhood and be surrounded by 80% of the residents that are renters. Yet a lot of investors take their first arrow in the assets trying to retail a HUD home or Fannie Mae repo or a VA home in a low-income area because they're so desperate to get going. So our thought process, our strategy is simply get in, get out, and get paid in the low-income areas. Flip those properties, buy them ugly, sell them ugly to other investors that are looking to do that relative to your market. Now, if you've got some questions as we're going through this, just raise your hand, and we'll send one of the mentors or one of the team members down here to you, and they'll give you the mic, and then you can ask that question as it comes up. All right? So we've got low-income areas, the ratio 80-20. The strategy for a low-income area is only to flip, to get in, get out, and get paid. Now, I learned that the hard way. I learned it the hard way because my protocol was to go to the low-income areas to buy them for cash flow. Then I discovered the rent doesn't collect itself, and the rest is history. And so I don't want you to repeat the mistakes that I've made. Now, if we continue, let's talk about anchors. Let's talk about anchors. Now, many of you have heard me talk about anchors over the years, but I find, and as I've found, and as I fine-tune this, the predominant anchors in your low-income areas are going to be hospitals and universities. The predominant anchors in your low-income areas are going to be hospitals and universities. That could be Stanford, which anchors a low-income area in East Palo Alto. It could be the Cleveland Clinic that anchors a low-income area in Cleveland. It could be Johns Hopkins that anchors a low-income area in Baltimore. It could be University of Southern California, USC, which is not in the greatest neighborhood. All right? Yet it is an anchor for that low-income area. So when we talk...
In which way do you call anchor?
The question is, in which way do you call anchors? An anchor is any type of economic structure that solidifies the financial base of the area. In other words, if you've got a low-income area with a bunch of rundown houses, the only thing that keeps that thing from totally degenerating is the fact that you've got a prime-time hospital there. You've got a prime-time university there. They police it more aggressively because of those anchors, and it keeps it from going below what we would call a low-income area. So that's what we're talking about with anchors. Now, the other thing we find in a lot of your low-income areas, and I wouldn't really identify it as an anchor, it might be a negative anchor, is we find a lot of your off-brand shopping. In a lot of your low-income areas, we find a lot of off-brand shopping. In other words, we don't have a lot of the chains down there. You get a lot of the mom-and-pop little convenience stores, maybe some of the mom-and-pop grocery stores. It's off-brand. It's not a national chain. And the reason is, in the low-income areas, the national chains don't want to go down there because those areas aren't anchored well enough. The only anchors, again, are typically hospitals and universities. Now, it creates lots of buying opportunity down there in these low-income areas. So you want to target your low-income areas where you live. And I'll talk more about targeting it, getting very specific tomorrow when we discuss establishing your areas of operation. But for the purposes of today, we talk about low-income areas, talk about anchors. The main anchors are hospitals and universities, and then you have the off-brand shopping, which is, in many cases, a negative anchor. Now, when we move into the moderate income areas, and you might make a note, many of you would refer to this as a working class area. Many of you would call this a working class area. The area ratio is 50-50. Half the folks that live there are renters. Half the folks that live there are owners. This is a much more stable area because of that. Much more stable area because of that. So our strategies. In a moderate income area, I still want you to focus on flipping. That should be your go-to strategy in not only low-income areas, but moderate income areas. But beyond flipping, you have some additional strategies that you can employ in moderate income areas because you do have more homeowners there. One thing that you can consider doing in a moderate income area is holding rental properties. Holding rental properties. Yes, the neighborhood's not fantastic. But you can hold rental properties as one of your strategies there. So the first strategy is to flip. Second strategy is you can look to keep it as a rental if the numbers work. And I find that if you're going to keep a rental property in a moderate income area, try to keep it on a better street. Those of you that have been through working class areas, you know how one street's predominantly homeowners. You can see the nice little white picket fence and all the flowers out front. You go one block over and most of them are run down. So if you're going to hold a rental property in one of these moderate income areas, try to hold it on a block that is predominantly owners. Predominantly owners. Now, if you live in a retail market, like California, one of the strategies that you can employ in a moderate income area is you can actually retail the home. And what I mean by retail the home is you can actually buy it, fix it, and sell it to a homeowner who will go out and get a brand new loan to buy it. The market is strong enough there that you can retail a home in a moderate income area. And I will go over the markets and let you know if you're in a wholesale or a retail market. All right? Now, if you're in a wholesale market, you don't want to retail homes. When I say retail, buy, fix, and sell on a new loan. But you can sell properties and carry the financing on an owner-financed basis. So this is a little bit of a tweak that has taken place in the markets and how we view those markets now. So my strategies in a moderate income area are to flip first. I can look at I can hold a rental. I can look at retailing the home to a homeowner if I'm in a retail market like California or Massachusetts. If you're in a wholesale market like, St. Louis or Baltimore, don't try to retail it to a homeowner on a new loan, but you can sell it and carry the financing, and I'll get into all those different strategies. And again, I'll talk about wholesale and retail markets and what you fit into. Now, the anchors in your moderate income areas, are generally the same anchors in the low income areas. You still have the university, you still have the hospital. What changes though now is we begin to have the brand stores. So in other words, we have the franchises beginning to appear in some of these moderate income areas. It's not just the mom and pop any longer. The franchises will invest their money there because it's a little bit more stable. Why is this area more stable, the moderate income area? More owners. Police calls, emergency calls, all go down when the number of homeowners goes up. And so the chains and the franchises look at that. So in a lot of these moderate income areas, you will find things, you'll find chains like CVS or Rite Aid or Walgreens, Save-On, those types of little stores. You'll find your McDonald's. You might find your Kentucky Fried Chicken or your Taco Bell going into some of these areas because economically they're a little bit better. Now, the other thing that you have as an anchor in the moderate income area that you don't have in the low income areas is you have the additional homeowners. Remember, in the low income area, we only have 20% owners. In a moderate income area, we have 50% owners. And a lot of those owners in the moderate income areas choose to live there. Oftentimes, the owners in low-income areas don't choose to live there anymore. They bought a home 30 years ago, and the neighborhood has collapsed around them. Now 80% of it is renters, and they're among the 20% that are homeowners. They'd love to sell their home, but they can't get enough money to go buy a home somewhere else, and they couldn't afford the payments. But in the moderate income areas, what many of you would call working class, you have 50% of the area as owners, and people do want to live there. Because maybe their mom and dad lives in the area, a family member lives in the area, it's close to their job, a lot of reasons like that. All right? Now, what we find, especially in the moderate income areas, is that the anchors always supply the needs. And I want you to make a note of that. It's real important. As you're gridding out any city in America, look at the anchors. Look at the anchors. In the low-income areas and in the moderate-income areas, the anchors always supply the needs of the people that live there. I like to refer to it as no-frills shopping. No-frills eating. You're not going to find a Whole Foods or a Signature Kroger or a Tom Thumb or Albertsons or Safeway with a latte bar in the low and moderate income areas. It's not going to happen. It's going to be no-frills shopping and eating that caters to the needs of the people that live there. Everybody follow that? So if you get into a neighborhood you've never been in before and you see a lot of the off-brand stores, you see a lot of these no-frills restaurants, no-frills shopping, you know immediately you're in a low to moderate income area. Therefore, your exit strategy should be to get in, get out, and get paid. Simply flip the property. So if you put me on a plane and blindfold me and parachute me anywhere in the country, I'm immediately looking at my anchors. Because my anchors in Santa Ana are different than my anchors in Yorba Linda, California. Completely different. And so then I know my strategy based upon the anchors. So we've got lots of little checkoffs here that we use and you can use along the way. Now, if we move into the middle income areas, lots of things begin to change. The first is the ratios again. Now, the ratio of renters to homeowners in a middle income area is 20% renters now, 80% homeowners. So the neighborhood is much more stable. Much more stable. As a result of that, our strategies begin to change. When you find that deal in a middle income area, your first thought process as far as exit strategy should be to retail the home. So make a note, retail the home. In other words, buy it, fix it, and sell it to a homeowner on a new loan. A homeowner wants to live here because they're surrounded by other homeowners. Everybody see that? Yep. Now another strategy in a middle income area is to what I call flip the financing. Flip the financing. If you can buy it cheap for cash, we'll wholesale it out. If they have no equity or they have negative equity, we're going to flip the financing. And I'll be teaching on that on Friday. I'll begin to get into flipping the financing. And it involves taking the properties subject to, and then I'll culminate on Sunday. So those are your two primary strategies in a middle income area. All right? Retail the home, in other words, buy it, fix it, and sell it. Or flip the financing if there's no equity and you can't buy it substantially below market value. Now, the third thing that you can do in a middle income area like this is you can do a lease option. And we'll talk about lease options on Saturday. A lease option basically is a retail sale with about a 2 to 3 year fuse, which you're selling it to somebody at a retail price, and in 2 or 3 years they're going to cash you out and take you out of that. Yes, question?
I thought lease options were outlawed in Texas.
Good question. Some markets, the laws for lease options have changed. And Texas is one of those markets where they're trying to figure out exactly the best way. They've kind of overreacted, I think, on the state level as far as lease options. And I think they'll begin to correct that over the next year or two. And we'll deal with some of those things on Saturday with lease options. His question was, the laws have changed in parts of the country that how they govern you doing lease options, contract for deeds, and things like that. Good question. So our strategies are different in the middle income areas than they are in the low income areas and in the moderate income areas. Now let's talk about our anchors. Is it warm in here? It is a little warm in here. It's not warm in here? Ladies, are you cold? Yes. Men, are you warm? Yes. Can we lower it just a little bit since I'm the one teaching and training, and then we can lovingly fight over it in the course of the event. All right. Now the anchors in your middle income areas are completely different than the low and moderate income areas. First thing I want you to write down is the anchors in these areas supply the wants of the people that live there. They supply the wants, not the needs. Big difference, right? They supply the wants. Therefore, your anchors in the middle income areas are malls, movies, and meals. Malls, movies, and meals. Easy to remember, 3M. Get a lot of the big mega malls, all right, with the nice high-end retailers. You get the big cineplexes, that have the nice movies, the current movies playing. And then you got the latest restaurants. You got your P.F. Chang's, you got your Cheesecake Factory, you got your high-end Mexican restaurant for whatever part of the country that you live in. You got your Outback Steakhouse and those types of restaurants. You have your Starbucks. You have your Barnes & Noble. You don't find Barnes & Noble in low-income areas. You don't find Starbucks in low-income areas. The only exception is if it's a downtown area that's undergoing gentrification or it's being yuppieized. But as a general rule, you don't find those things down there. Now, these anchors that I just described supply the wants to those that live there. You know, a $4 cup of coffee at Starbucks is a want. It's not a need. Now, what I've discovered over the years is after about 6 months, it does become a need. Some of you can relate to that. All right? So that is the one exception that kind of messes up my example there a little bit. But you understand that if you can spend $4 on a cup of coffee, that's a want, it's not a need. Now, why is that important? If the area is anchored by the wants, it's an appreciating area. It's an appreciating area. If the area is anchored by the wants, it's an appreciating area. In other words, it's the growth pattern of town. It's the growth pattern of town. It's where things are happening. And all you need to do is piggyback the research of those people that have spent millions of dollars figuring that out. If the anchors supply the needs, then you know that you're not typically in the growth pattern. You're not typically in an appreciating area. You're more in an area that's leveled out. It'll be lower on the socioeconomic scale. It's got attractive price points. The properties will cash flow. And that's when we want to drop in there and flip those properties to other investors. So that's how you want to grid out your markets. If the anchors supply the wants, then it's going to be the growth pattern. If it supplies the needs, it's going to be your wholesale area where you get in, get out, and get paid. Any questions on that? Yes, and I'll repeat the question.
How would you classify a historic district that's being revitalized?
How would I classify a historic area that's being revitalized? I would consider that to be more along the lines of the middle income. It's being yuppieized, it's being gentrified, and a lot of times what you'll find is the anchors begin to move in there, chasing that population that's fixing them up. Good question. Yes?
Two questions. One, how close does the anchor have to be? And when an area is being developed and it's obvious you see all this new property, at what point do the anchors start changing?
The first question is how close do the anchors need to be? Typically the anchors are within probably a quarter of a mile to about 2 miles, depending upon how large the anchor is. You know, a Starbucks might be a quarter of a mile, whereas a mall might be 3 miles away. And in the developing areas, it's pretty easy to see when you've got that sprawl going where they're building the brand new Lowe's and Home Depot and the Applebee's is going up. That becomes pretty obvious.
So I'm saying where you see the houses, but the anchors haven't developed.
Okay, areas that are developing where you see the housing but not the anchors. If the housing is being developed, like she lives in Oakland, so like on the way over into the Central Valley or in different parts, you see the houses going up. And then what happens in that case is the retailers will chase the housing. The retailers will chase the housing. So that's what we consider a growth pattern or a growth corridor. Good questions. We having fun so far?
Oh, yeah.
You learning some good stuff?
Yes.
All right, well, let's continue in our evolution. Now, at the bottom of that page there, the bottom of that page, the bottom of that page, it says urban and suburban areas. As a general rule, urban areas you want to flip, and suburban areas you want to hold. As a general rule, urban areas you want to flip, suburban areas you want to hold. Urban areas flip, suburban areas hold. It's a general parameter for you. Urban areas, the anchors supply the needs. Suburban areas, the anchors supply the wants. And when you begin to think like this, you literally can grid out a whole city very, very quickly based upon the anchors. Based upon the anchors. And it allows you to get in, get out, and get paid quickly, regardless of the market. Now, a couple things that I want you to consider. Contrarian thinking. I've been talking a lot about that this morning. What happens in real estate investing is that people always jump in at the wrong time. Markets move through cycles. They go through expansion, absorption, and contraction. Those of you that were at the Hawaii buying retreat heard me talk about markets that expand, absorb, and contract. If you've been to another buying retreat, you've heard me talk about that. And what happens is the masses always jump in the absorption phase and right at the contraction phase. Think about yourself. When do typically people buy real estate? They buy stocks when things are going well, when things are going good. It gives them confidence. It makes them feel good. That's how the masses always buy. And the masses' timing is almost always what? Almost always wrong. So I don't want you to think like the masses. All right? Don't think like the masses. Simply supply them with deals. Don't think like them. Supply them with deals. So the masses are running out and they're getting the glossy covered books. All right? They're getting the home study courses. They're going to the generic boot camps. Nothing wrong with any of those things. All right? Carlton Sheets has a good course for $200. All right? It's a primer on creative financing. A lot of the gurus, Russ Whitney and Robert Allen, have good, what I would call basic course materials that get you involved in real estate, get you dreaming and heading in the right direction. They give you a philosophy, but a lot of times it's not a full-blown battle plan, right? And that's why you folks are here for the first time, and many of you are here coming back so that you can have a step-by-step, reality-based battle plan. So contrarian thinking, avoid the masses. All right? Don't invest like the masses, just sell to them. Now, as you're targeting areas, you want to target transitional areas to flip houses. Target transitional areas, in other words, low-income areas and moderate-income areas that are getting better. How can you tell if a low-income area is transitioning and it's getting better? What are some thoughts there? Yes?
Improvements in the streets and some of those things by the city.
Okay, city improvements is one way to see that it's getting better. What's that? The anchors are improving. Okay, maybe you have no anchors and now you're beginning to get some off-brand anchors, and maybe McDonald's says, hey, we're going to roll the dice here. Yes? Newer buildings, absolutely. An example of that, Dalton's right on track there, an example of that would be Habitat for Humanity. Building brand new homes as low-income housing for owner-occupants. See, Habitat for Humanity, in conjunction with the city, is working on changing the area ratio. They always build in low-income areas. They always build in low-income areas where 80% of the residents are renters. And what happens is there's a boarded-up house that never gets fixed, never gets bought, and eventually what does the city do? They bulldoze it. Well, the city charges you when they bulldoze your property. Now, the person that left their house in that condition and got it bulldozed doesn't have the money to pay the city to bulldoze it. So they don't pay when the city issues an invoice. So what the city does is they foreclose on that lot for the unpaid bulldozing fees. Now the city has a lot in the hood. Now, what does the city want to do with a lot in the hood? Well, they gift it as a write-off to Habitat for Humanity. And then what does Habitat for Humanity do? They find a family that's qualified, the materials are donated, a lot of the labor is donated, and then they place a family in a brand new moderate income home. Now, why is that good for the city? Well, when you put a homeowner there, it begins to change the ratios. And so Habitat for Humanity, you can call information and get the local chapter of Habitat for Humanity for your area. I would encourage you to do that. Contact Habitat for Humanity in your area. Find out where they're building some homes. You can actually go volunteer to work on a Habitat for Humanity crew, whether you know anything about construction or not. You'll learn an awful lot if you do that. Now, here's a tip. When you go work on one of those crews, and it's a lot of fun, go down on a Saturday or Sunday, they put these things up quick. Make sure you've got your vehicle out there with the magnetic sign that say, "We buy houses." All right? Because you will generate a lot of activity from other investors that are running by, other homeowners that want to sell their properties in those target areas. So you always have to be thinking downfield. Always tweak. Always refine. Always commit to get better. Always commit to get better. So Habitat for Humanity is a great thing to contact. You also have a nonprofit, what we call city-built homes, where the city gets involved in a nonprofit way. It's kind of like Habitat for Humanity, and they bring brand new homes into the area. You can call the city and find out where they're building city-built homes or nonprofit homes in the same types of areas, and That will allow you to quickly target transitional areas. All right, and that's what you want to follow to flip properties. Now, you want to follow the growth patterns. Follow the growth patterns if you want to look at holding properties in your market. So if you want to hold some rental properties in your market, you want to follow the growth patterns. In other words, where are the anchors supplying the wants? Where are the malls, movies, and meals? Now, many of you live in markets that